I wasn't supposed to be there that morning. My badge pinged at 6:42 a.m., way too early for anyone to expect me. I'd taken a red-eye back from Chicago, suitcase still in my trunk, coffee still cooling in the cup holder. All I wanted was to grab a quick shower before the pilot later that day. But when the elevator doors opened on our floor, I heard my name, followed by the words, "Delete it all." The war room lights were blazing, our walls of sticky notes, diagrams, sprint burn-downs, gone. My boss Ava stood in the middle with two of her favorites, yanking post-its like dead leaves. One of them was pulling network cables from a test rack. Another scrolled on the command terminal, cursor hovering over our repo. They were talking about me like I was already out of the company. "He's been coasting for months," Ava said, sliding her sunglasses up into her hair, even though it was barely sunrise. "We'll say he didn't follow readiness protocols. We'll spin this as a rescue effort." The others laughed nervously, waiting for her cue. She gave it. "Blame it on him. Tear it down before the client shows up." I froze by the doorway. My flight jacket still smelled like airport air, but my heart was pumping clean rage. I didn't interrupt. Not yet. I just pulled out my phone, thumbed open the Notes app, and hit record. The microphone caught every word, the sound of a keyboard clacking, even Ava's heels against the tile. Then I saw it, a USB-C drive left on the corner of the whiteboard ledge, labeled in black marker, "Hotfix." Someone must have rushed out to grab more coffee and forgot it. I slipped it into my pocket, not even sure why. Just instinct. Ava raised her voice. "The pilot is at 1 o'clock. We'll reframe it as scope rebranding. Nobody questions me. They question him. Make it look like he was gone when everything broke." That's when I stepped inside. The room went silent except for the hum of the server fans. Ava's face drained for half a second before she put the smile back on. "You're early," she said, like I was the one intruding. I set my carry-on down by the table. Red-Eye got in sooner. Funny thing, flights don't always crash when you expect them to. Nobody laughed. The terminal still showed the repo path, cursor blinking at Git branch. D project main. I looked at it, then back at Ava. "You sure you want to delete a year of work with the client landing in less than 7 hours? She crossed her arms. "It's unusable. I'll explain to leadership. They trust me." I didn't argue. Not yet. I tapped my phone screen, making sure the recording was still rolling, then slipped it back into my jacket. Inside, I wasn't shaking. I wasn't yelling. I was cataloging. The timestamp on the wall clock, the badge log showing I'd entered at 6:42, the USB drive in my pocket, the repo command in plain sight. Receipts. That was the word echoing in my head. Receipts don't raise their voices. They just wait. I picked up one of the discarded sticky notes, the kind with my handwriting on it, risk memo reference numbers, backlog IDs. My initials were still smudged in the corner. I pressed it flat against the table like I was saving it. Ava leaned closer. "You'll thank me when this doesn't blow up in your face." I said nothing. I just thought about the email already scheduled for 8 a.m. Pilot readiness. Final checklist, sent by me to the client with the signed artifact attached. Immutable. Time-stamped. A copy outside her reach, so I let her talk. I let her pull her show together. I let her imagine I was cornered. Because sometimes the smartest move isn't fighting the storm. It's hitting record and letting the storm incriminate itself. And by 1 o'clock, when the client walked through the door, every gust she'd stirred was about to blow back on her harder than she could possibly handle. It didn't start with the shouting. It started with the smallest lie, one so trivial we called it formatting. Ava had asked me to update a quarterly slide deck. Nothing major, just a minor design refresh, client logos, bullet points about feature readiness. I'd run the data twice, exported clean numbers, and pasted them into the charts. The next morning, those charts looked better. Only better didn't mean accurate. The SLA compliance line had quietly shifted from 87% to 94%. The churn prediction dropped from 11% to 7%. all without rerunning the queries. When I asked her about it, she didn't flinch. Presentation is perception, she said, tapping the edge of the deck with one lacquered nail. The client wants confidence, not caveats. That was month 2 of a 12-month sprint. By month 4, I'd learned my lesson. I kept 2 copies of everything, the one she wanted and the one I trusted. She craved optics. I craved integrity. And while she was dressing up dashboards, my team and I were grinding weekends, building the thing from the ground up, an internal analytics tool that could actually trigger service-level alerts in real time. Not theater, not cosmetic. Real systems that mattered. But Ava hated the quiet parts. The risk memos, the test failures, the tickets marked blocker. Those were smudges on her lipstick. I filed them anyway, signed with my initials, attached to JIRA IDs. Each one was a paper cut she ignored, until the stack looked like a weapon. 3 times she overrode go-no-go gates. First was integration testing. The vendor API was throttling too aggressively. She said, "Ship it. We'll demo against Sandbox." Second was staging security review. We flagged a dependency that hadn't passed compliance. She said, "It won't come up in the pilot. Do it anyway." Third was the final readiness checkpoint. We still had 2 critical bugs, a memory leak and a caching inconsistency. She stood at the end of the table, arms folded, and told the directors, "All green." We left that meeting with marching orders. 1 o'clock pilot, no excuses. My team knew the truth. We'd built miracles in cramped sprints, patched things at 3 a.m., and documented every mile of the marathon. They didn't complain, not out loud, but I saw the exhaustion on their faces, the way some stared at their keyboards like praying for mercy. One developer, a quiet guy named Rafi, pulled me aside once. "She's not setting you up. She's setting all of us up." His eyes were bloodshot, but steady. "Keep your receipts." So I did. Every edit, every override, every risk memo. And now, the morning of the pilot, I was staring at the calendar invite Ava herself had created. Pilot readiness, 1 p.m. Attendees, Ava, me, our exec sponsor, the client PM, and a couple of engineers. Subject line in all caps, non-negotiable. And yet there she was at dawn, telling her favorites to burn it all down and pin the ashes on me. She didn't hate the project because it was broken. She hated it because it was real. Real meant risk. Real meant accountability. Fake numbers on a slide deck couldn't crash. A live system could. What she didn't know was that the build she wanted to bury was already mirrored outside her reach, notarized, signed, and time-stamped with the client's own credentials. The only thing left was time. 7 hours until the client walked through the door. 7 hours until Ava learned the difference between managing perception and facing proof. I told my team once, half joking, documentation isn't sexy, but it saves lives. Today, it wasn't about lives, it was about careers. Hers, mine, and everyone who'd been dragged along. She didn't waste any time turning the stand-up into a firing squad. By 9:15 a.m., the whole project team was crammed into the war room, screens glowing, whiteboards wiped clean. Ava stood at the head of the table, back straight, voice sharp as glass. "This build is unshippable. We are not risking the client's reputation or ours on a half-baked demo." Her words weren't aimed at the code. They were aimed at me. I'd barely set my bag down before she was waving a manicured hand at the display. "You were supposed to manage readiness. Look at this mess. Broken integrations, unstable branches, and incomplete documentation." I kept my face neutral. My phone was still in my jacket pocket, recording every syllable. One of her lieutenants pulled up the repo on the main screen, cursor blinking over my branch, Project Mount Main. "Delete it," Ava said, just like that. Not a suggestion, a command. The dev hesitated. His chair creaked as he leaned back, eyes flicking to me. "You heard me?" she snapped. "We're not wasting another second. Kill the branch." I raised my hand slightly. 10 minutes. That's all I need. I'll show you the signed build artifact from last night. The one we notarized with the client's own credentials. If you still think it's unshippable after that, fine. Kill it. She didn't even let me finish. No, you had your chance. You failed. We're moving forward without you. The room went dead silent. You could hear the fans in the rack humming, the faint tick of the wall clock. Then the dev typed the command. Git branch. D. Project Bartist main. The screen blinked. The branch was gone. It should have felt like a knife to the chest. Months of work evaporating in 3 keystrokes. But I didn't flinch. Because I knew what Ava didn't. The signed build lived in a mirror outside her control. Immutable, time-stamped, untouchable. So I let them have their little purge. I let the cursor dance in the terminal printout, deleted branch project main. Because in less than 4 hours, when the client landed and sat in that very room, they wouldn't be staring at a dead repo. They'd be staring at me running a flawless demo. And when Ava tried to explain why she'd deleted the only working branch hours before the pilot, the receipts would do all the talking. At 10:27, my phone buzzed with an email. Subject line, landing in 45 for pilot, from the client PM herself. I glanced at Ava. She was already rehearsing her narrative out loud. We'll position this as scope redefinition. We'll say the old build was non-compliant, and that I led the effort to course correct. Everyone sticks to the story, understood? A couple of heads nodded reluctantly. Most just stared at their screens. I slid the USB-C drive deeper into my pocket. Its label, hotfix, digging into my palm. I still hadn't opened it. Didn't need to. The real weapon wasn't on that drive. It was in the mirror, signed and sealed. Ava looked at me, eyes glittering. You'll thank me when the client sees how I salvage this disaster. I smiled just enough for her to notice. Not the kind of smile that says, you're right. The kind that says, keep talking. Because the louder she got, the clearer the recording became. And by the time the client walked through those glass doors, she'd written every line of her own obituary. The pilot kickoff was supposed to feel routine. Just a conference room, a projector, a few polite introductions before running the client through the build. Ava even made a show of handing out branded pens and notepads, as if props could distract from the fact that she'd ordered our main branch deleted less than 3 hours earlier. She smiled like a politician when the client PM walked in. We're so glad you're here. We've rescoped to ensure today's demo is perfectly aligned with your vision. I sat 2 seats down, laptop closed, waiting. The exec sponsor cleared his throat. All right, let's keep this tight. The client has a flight out at 4. Ava gestured to one of her loyalists to connect their laptop. She began spinning her story. Our previous branch had compliance issues, so I directed the team to rebuild with a more stable foundation. Today we'll walk you through the revised architecture. Hold on, the client PM interrupted, brows furrowed. We signed off on that branch. What compliance issues? Ava's smile didn't crack. It wasn't demo ready. Trust me, this new approach. That's when I leaned forward, calm, steady. If you don't mind, I'd like to share something first. 10 minutes, no more. Ava's head snapped toward me. We're not, but the exec sponsor raised a hand. Let him. 10 minutes. So I opened my laptop. The room dimmed as the projector synced. And then silence, except for the low whir of the fan. Click. Build notarization screen. Click. Signed artifact. Timestamped 11:57 p.m. last night. Click. Immutable checksum matching the client's sandbox mirror. This, I said, voice even, is the build you approved. The one you signed off on. Still intact. Still compliant. Still running. I hit enter. The system launched. Dashboard live. Real-time alerts triggered on test data. Queries executed without delay. End-to-end workflow flawless. Nobody breathed. The client PM leaned closer. That's exactly what we'd expected to see. I nodded. Because it's exactly what we built, and exactly what was deleted this morning. The exec sponsor turned sharply. Deleted! I pulled up the screen recording. The terminal log from 9:17 a.m. Git branch, D Project Main. The username stamped in the corner. Ava's loyalist typing the command at her order. The room went ice cold. Ava laughed nervously. That's out of context. We were... I clicked again. Risk memos. 3 of them. All filed, time-stamped, signed by me, all explicitly overridden by Ava. Integration throttling, staging compliance, security red flag. Each dismissed in her own handwriting, proceed anyway. The client PM's face hardened. You overrode compliance? Ava tried to recover. It was necessary. The team wasn't moving fast enough. Then legal, who'd been silent in the back, spoke. Pause. We'll need to verify that with security. 2 minutes later, security confirmed. The deleted branch had been mirrored automatically to the protected sandbox. And not just mirrored, it showed Ava's own push to a private repo, a repo tagged with her initials. The exec sponsor stood. We're done here. Ava, step out. Now. Her smile finally cracked. The only sound in the room was the fan on my laptop, still humming over a dashboard that worked exactly as designed. Her favorite word was protocol. Ironically, that's the same word legal used when they walked her out. The fallout didn't happen in a single explosion. It landed in quiet, heavy waves, each one harder than the last. First came the HR interviews. Everyone who'd been in that war room was called in. Most tried to downplay what they'd seen. 2 cracked immediately. One admitted Ava had ordered the deletion. Another confirmed she'd told them to stick to the story. Then came the compliance review. Security pulled repo logs, cross-matched them with badge swipes, emails, and risk memos. The paper trail was undeniable. Not only had Ava ordered the working build deleted, she'd pushed a near-identical copy into a private repo under her own initials, an attempt to fork the project and claim authorship. 3 days later, the vendor we partnered with confirmed what legal suspected. Ava had approached them about drafting a parallel SAO in her name. She'd been trying to repackage the project, scrub my team's fingerprints off it, and present it as her solo effort to leadership. The client wasn't subtle in their response. A formal letter went to the board. We expect leadership accountability and stability, or we reconsider our partnership. Translation: remove her or lose the account. By Friday, Ava was terminated for cause. No farewell email, no glossy LinkedIn post. Just her badge deactivated and her name erased from the org chart. I thought that would be the end of it. But then the exec sponsor called me into his office. You're the natural successor, he said, sliding an envelope across the table. Inside, a retention offer, stock options, a salary bump that made my head spin. Take her role. Lead the division. I didn't touch the envelope. Appreciate it, I said carefully. But if this project taught me anything, it's that titles don't build products. Teams do. I'll stay, on one condition. He leaned back, curious. Promote Rafi to tech lead. Give the team raises. And formalize quality gates so no one can override compliance with lipstick on a slide deck again. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Done. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about climbing into her chair. It was about making sure the people who carried this thing on their backs got to stand tall in daylight for once. Word spread fast. Some called me naive for turning down the title. Others called me reckless for forcing leadership's hand. But when my team opened their pay stubs and saw the difference, when Rafi took his new badge and grinned for the first time in months, I knew it was the only move that mattered. Ava once said protocol was her shield. Turns out it was the very sword that cut her down. 2 months later, her name landed in my inbox again, not from HR, not from my company, from an automated system. I'd taken the retention bonus, but not her title. I carved out a parallel role, build owner with authority over quality gates and veto power on compliance. My team got raises, Rafi got his lead badge, and the product launched without fireworks. Quiet, clean, working exactly as promised. No champagne speeches, Just dashboards running steady in the background, while clients smiled and renewed contracts. That was the win. Not headlines, not LinkedIn posts, just stability. Then came the email, an automated flag from our new vendor screening tool. A candidate had applied for a senior role in our division. Their background showed risk indicators, compliance override history, IP disputes, prior termination for cause. The system pulled the metadata and attached the name. Ava. I stared at the screen for a long time, coffee cooling in my hand. Same spelling, same initials, same resume. Scrubbed, polished, but familiar. The irony hit hard. The very policy draft I'd written after her downfall, the one mandating background checks for leadership hires, was what had caught her. The same protocol she once weaponized was now the filter keeping her out. I didn't gloat. I didn't forward it with a smirk. I just clicked reviewed, attached the compliance logs from her termination file, and let the system do what it was built to do. Protect the work, protect the people. Because this was never about revenge. Revenge is noisy, it burns fast. Documentation, that's quiet. It lasts. I thought about the team across the hall, laughing over pizza boxes as their new feature passed integration tests. I thought about Rafi, grinning like he'd finally slept through a night. And I thought about Ava, probably still convinced she'd been the smartest person in every room. She wasn't. The room just stopped, letting her control the story. I closed the email, took a sip of coffee, watched the dashboard tick another green check. That was enough. If you've ever had your own Ava in the workplace, drop a comment. Where you're from, what happened, how it ended. Because the truth is simple. The loudest people don't always win. The ones who keep receipts do.